Welcome to the sleep hours, the only place where cartoons fall asleep before you do. So grab your blanket, tuck in your favorite plushie, and let's get weird. Tonight, join Rick and Morty on a calm, magical journey through the stars. Drift with them as they explore glowing nebulae, cosmic campfires in the enchanting Starfall Glade. This story is filled with soft lights, gentle creatures, and peaceful adventures, perfect for helping you relax, unwind, and slowly drift into a deep, soothing sleep. The night was unusually quiet in the Smith household. The hum of the garage, usually buzzing with Rick's experiments, had settled into a low, comforting drone. Morty, tucked under a blanket in the corner, yawned loudly. Rick, are we, doing this whole dream adventure thing tonight? I thought you said it was supposed to be, like relaxing. Morty's voice trembled between curiosity and sleepiness. Rick, hunched over a softly glowing console, glanced back with a half-smile. Instead of his usual manic energy, his tone was calmer, slower, like he had dialed himself down for once. Morty, relax. No portal guns, no exploding planets, no crazy paradoxes, just drifting. Think of it as a bedtime road trip through the universe. Low stakes, cozy vibes only knows. Morty blinked, trying to process the unusual tone. Bedtime road trip? Okay. But usually when you say low stakes, Rick, it ends with me running from, like, space eels or something. Not tonight, Morty. Rick pressed a button and the lights dimmed. The garage ceiling opened like a curtain, revealing a glittering canvas of stars. The ship hummed to life, but instead of roaring, it purred almost like a lullaby. Tonight we float. That's it. We just float. The ship lifted gently, and soon they were gliding above the rooftops. Morty leaned back, surprised at how smooth everything felt. No sudden jerks, no chaos, no Rick yelling. Just a steady rhythm. He felt his shoulders drop as if the stars themselves were telling him to relax. Wow, it's actually night, Morty whispered, his words drifting off. Don't sound so surprised, Morty, Rick said softly. He wasn't even belching between words, just talking evenly. The universe isn't always out to get us. Sometimes, if you catch it at the right angle, it's just a nightlight that never burns out. They floated higher past the thin veil of Earth's atmosphere. Colors shifted, deep blues gave way to soft purples, scattered with faint golden specks. Nebula clouds stretched lazily across the void, pulsing with slow, gentle light. Morty pressed his hands to the glass. It's like the whole sky is breathing. Rick leaned back in his seat, arms folded behind his head. That's 'cause it kind of is. Space isn't empty, Morty. It's alive. You just gotta slow down long enough to notice. For a while, neither of them spoke. The ship glided through streaks of light like falling stars. Morty's eyelids grew heavy, lulled by the rhythm of the hum and the view outside. Every now and then, a soft comet drifted past, glowing like a candle in the dark. Rick eventually broke the silence, his voice quiet, almost like he was telling Morty a bedtime story. Back when I was younger, I used to think the universe was this endless chaos, all sharp edges and noise. But nights like this, they prove it's got a softer side. It's not all about explosions and experiments. Sometimes it just wants you to sleep. Morty let out a drowsy laugh. You sound different tonight, Rick. Less, burpy. Rick chuckled, shaking his head. Don't get used to it, Morty. I'm just matching the mood. Cosmic drift doesn't need chaos. It needs calm. The ship sailed onward, threading between stars as if they were lanterns hanging in an endless sky. Morty's head tilted against the seat, eyes half shut. His breathing slowed, syncing with the soft thrum of the engine. For once, there was no tension in his voice, just a sleepy sigh. Rick, this is kind of perfect. Rick glanced at him, his own expression softer than usual. Yeah, Morty, it is. Outside, the nebula's glow deepened, and the stars shimmered faintly, almost as if they were nodding off with them. The ship drifted further, passing through a soft haze of stardust. It sparkled gently against the glass like glitter carried on a silent wind. Morty reached out instinctively, brushing his hand across the window even though he knew he couldn't actually touch it. It's like snow, he whispered, his voice almost lost the low hum of the engine. Rick nodded, unusually patient. Exactly. The universe has its own kind of weather. You just gotta slow down enough to feel it. Most people race past, chasing explosions, answers, or power. But right here, right now, this is the part they all miss. Morty sat quietly, staring. His breathing softened, his shoulders relaxing even more. For once, he didn't feel small out here. The stars didn't look like they were mocking him or reminding him of how tiny he was. Tonight, they felt like company. After a long pause, Morty asked quietly, "Do you ever, I don't know, just stop, Rick? Without building something or running from something?" Rick tilted his head, his eyes reflecting the glow of the stardust. His voice came out steady, almost tender. "More than you'd think, Morty. I just don't usually, invite anyone along for it. But tonight's different. You looked like you needed it." Morty's throat tightened for a moment, but he smiled, pulling the blanket tighter around his shoulders. "Thanks, Rick." Rick waved his hand as if brushing the gratitude aside, but his smirk carried warmth. "Don't get mushy, Morty. Just enjoy the ride." The ship slipped into the shadow of a nearby moon, its silvery glow washing over them. Instead of barren craters, the surface sparkled faintly, dotted with crystalline formations that twinkled like tiny lanterns. Morty pressed closer to the window. "Whoa! Are those glowing rocks?" Rick chuckled softly. "Yeah, moon quartz. Harmless but beautiful. The locals, if there even are locals, believe each one holds a dream that's waiting to be remembered. That's why they shine brighter at night." Morty's eyes widened. "That's actually kind of nice. Like little jars of dreams just sitting out there." "Mm-hmm. And tonight, Morty, we're not disturbing them. No mining, no stealing, no science experiments. Just passing through." They floated on, weaving gently between drifting clusters of quartz. Each shimmered softly, like breathing fireflies scattered across the moon's face. The silence between Rick and Morty wasn't empty, it was full, like a warm blanket wrapping around them both. Rick exhaled slowly, and the sound almost a sigh. Most of the time I forget this side of the job exists. I get so wrapped up in fixing, tinkering, surviving. But the truth is, Morty, the universe doesn't need us to fight it all the time. Sometimes it just wants us to notice it. Morty leaned back, his eyelids drooping. His words came slower now, softer. It's weird hearing you talk like this, Rick. Like you're peaceful or something." Rick smirked faintly. "Don't let it go to your head, Morty. I'm still me. I just picked the right night for silence." The ship glided out of the moon's glow, back into the wider ocean of stars. The nebula had spread like a soft wave, its colors shifting in lazy rhythm. Pinks melting into blues, blues fading into lavender. It looked alive, like a slow heartbeat stretched across space. Morty blinked drowsily. "It's like the sky's dreaming, too." "Exactly," Rick murmured. "And we're just passengers in it tonight. Nothing more, nothing less." The hum of the engine deepened, steadier now, like the bass of a quiet lullaby. The rhythm settled into Morty's chest, sinking with his breaths. He felt himself drifting, not just through space, but closer to sleep. Rick glanced over at him, noticing the way Morty's head had tilted to the side, his mouth slightly open, breaths evening out. For once, Rick didn't tease him. He just adjusted the ship to an even slower drift, lowering the lights to a warm amber glow. "Sleep if you want, Morty," he said softly, almost whispering. "The universe will keep." And with that, the stars continued their gentle watch. The ship, no longer a vehicle of chaos, had become a cradle gliding through the endless night. The ship's course remained steady, gliding through the wide arms of the nebula. Colors shifted in waves, subtle but hypnotic, like someone slowly painting the sky with glowing watercolors. A faint hum came from the ship's core, the kind of sound that wrapped around you like a low purr meant to soothe. Morty stirred slightly, opening his eyes just enough to catch the sight before they grew heavy again. "Rick, it's beautiful." His words trailed off, almost a sigh. Rick, resting back in his chair, gave a small nod. "Yeah, Morty, it really is. This is the stuff nobody writes about, you know? They want to hear about wormholes and black holes and explosions. But the quiet nights and the drift, that's when the universe feels alive." Morty blinked slowly, fighting sleep. "Feels like we're just floating forever." "Pretty much," Rick said softly. "And forever is not as scary when it looks like this." Outside, the stars flickered gently, some winking in and out as the ship passed. Every so often, a larger cluster appeared, glowing a little brighter than the rest, like constellations rearranging themselves just for tonight. The silence in the cabin wasn't heavy, it was gentle, filled only by the occasional creak of the ship's frame adjusting as it coasted. Morty's breathing steadied again, and Rick let the quiet linger. He wasn't used to silence meaning comfort. Normally, silence meant danger, waiting for the next shot to be fired or the next portal to collapse. But here, tonight, it was something else. It was safe. It was still. The nebula deepened in color as they drifted closer, its edges now glowing faint gold. Wisps of dust curled lazily in arcs, moving slower than clouds. Rick adjusted the ship ever so slightly, guiding them toward the thickest part of the glow. Morty stirred again, half awake. Are we, going through it?" Rick's voice stayed calm, steady. "Yeah, don't worry, it's harmless. Just light and dust, like drifting through a dream." The ship eased forward, and the nebula wrapped around them like a blanket. The windows filled with color, soft lavender, streaks of rose pink, and faint sparks of silver. It wasn't overwhelming. Instead, it glowed like the inside of a lantern, washing the cabin in a dim, shifting warmth. Morty let out a long, slow exhale. "It's like we're inside a nightlight." Rick smiled faintly, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "That's one way to put it." The nebula shimmered, and for a moment, it almost looked as though shapes were forming within the colors, gentle outlines like waves, or maybe shadows of creatures drifting alongside them. They weren't threatening. They were just there, companions in the endless night. Rick watched quietly, his eyes soft. He didn't explain, didn't lecture, didn't reduce it to science. Tonight wasn't for equations or theories. Tonight was for wonder. Morty shifted again, his blanket slipping a little as his head leaned against the side of the chair. His words came faint, dreamlike. "Do you think the universe dreams, Rick?" Rick didn't answer right away. He let the question hang in the quiet hum of the cabin. Then gently he replied, "Yeah, Morty, I think maybe it does. And maybe this," he gestured faintly to the glowing nebula around them, "is how it dreams, slow, soft, endless." Morty made a sleepy sound halfway between a hum and a sigh, and then fell quiet again. Rick leaned back, letting the ship coast, his eyes drifting half shut. For once, he didn't feel the urge to reach for a flask or tinker with a lever. He just sat there, surrounded by the quiet breath of the cosmos, and allowed himself to rest. Outside, the nebula pulsed faintly, like the rhythm of a heartbeat, slow and steady. And within it, the ship drifted on, as though carried by an invisible tide. The stars beyond blurred into softer pinpricks, and the cabin dimmed further, settling into a warm, amber glow. It felt less like a spaceship now and more like a floating home, a cradle drifting on the vast ocean of night. And inside, Rick and Morty slept, not chased, not running, not breaking or fixing anything, just resting, side by side, as the universe dreamed with them. The ship continued gliding deeper into the nebula, and time seemed to stretch thin, almost disappearing. Minutes didn't feel like minutes anymore. They felt like soft waves rolling gently one after another. The hum of the engines softened until it became less of a sound and more of a presence in the room, steady, constant, like a heartbeat beneath the floor. It filled the cabin not with noise but with comfort, like a familiar lullaby played too quietly to distract, but loud enough to reassure. Morty had slipped fully into sleep now, his face calm, eyes closed in a peaceful stillness that was rare for him. His breathing came slow, deep, and even, and with each rise and fall of his chest, the blanket shifted just slightly, catching the glow of the nebula light. Rick stayed awake a little longer, his gaze fixed outside. The colors swirled endlessly, stretching in every direction. Gold and lavender, faint pinks, slow-turning blues, all of them blending together in layers as if the universe itself had dipped its hands into paints and decided to make something just for them. It reminded him of old nights he could barely recall, nights when silence wasn't lonely but full of quiet company. There had been so few of those in his life, but tonight was one of them. For a long while, Rick didn't move. His breathing slowed to match Morty's, and his eyelids grew heavier with every blink. His thoughts, normally tangled, sharp, and restless, unraveled into something simpler. Not worries, not regrets, just quiet. Outside the ship, the nebula pulsed again, faint but rhythmic. A slow expansion and contraction, almost as if it were breathing with them. It was the kind of detail that might have startled someone else. But tonight, in this cocoon of soft colors and silence, it only felt natural. The cabin grew warmer, bathed in hues that seemed to dim and glow in perfect harmony with Morty's steady breaths. The universe outside no longer felt endless. It felt close, wrapped around them like a blanket, holding them gently in its quiet arms. Rick finally closed his eyes, head tipping back against the chair. His voice, barely above a whisper, drifted into the stillness. "Sweet dreams, Morty." The words faded quickly, swallowed by the hum of the ship. But the feeling lingered. The vessel floated on, swallowed whole by the glowing nebula, and within, time seemed to fold softly around them, stretching into something timeless. No rush, no destination. Just the ship, the stars, and the steady rhythm of rest. Outside, the stars blinked faintly into the distance, their light softened by the haze of colors. They flickered not like warnings or signals, but like tiny lanterns, keeping watch while Rick and Morty slept. The nebula's glow shimmered faintly one last time, then steadied, like the universe settling into its own long exhale. And the ship drifted on, quiet, weightless, safe. The ship drifted further into the glowing folds of the nebula, the stars outside melting into swirls of violet and blue. The hum of the engine stayed steady like a low lullaby for the universe. Morty, still curled up in his chair, shifted and sighed, his mind slipping deeper into dreamland. Inside his dream, Morty found himself standing barefoot on something that looked like glass. Beneath him, The glass wasn't solid. It shimmered like a liquid mirror, reflecting stars beneath his feet. Each step rippled light across the surface, sending glowing waves outward like rings in a pond. "What the—" Morty muttered to himself in the dream, his voice echoing strangely. He looked up and saw enormous jellyfish drifting through the air. But these weren't normal jellyfish. They were made of starlight. Their long, glowing tendrils trailed endlessly, brushing the dreamlike sky with soft arcs of gold and silver. They pulsed gently, almost in rhythm with his heartbeat. The sight made him feel small, but not in a bad way. More like he was part of something huge and gentle, something that carried him instead of threatened him. Meanwhile, in the real world, Rick sat slouched in his chair, chin resting against his hand. His eyes half closed, he could feel himself drifting too. His mind wasn't sharp and analytical right now. It was sluggish, unbothered. He noticed the nebula outside was behaving oddly. The colors shifted in waves, pulsing almost like those jellyfish Morty was dreaming of. Weird feedback loop, Rick murmured. Too tired to question it deeply. His voice was barely audible. Kid dreams about space jellyfish, and the nebula decides to play along. The cruiser's panels dimmed even further, adjusting to the surrounding glow. Outside, the stars stretched and shimmered, some bending faintly like they were seen through water. Rick squinted, realizing the entire ship seemed to be floating in a giant current, a cosmic tide that carried them gently forward. In Morty's dream, the jellyfish dipped lower, one of them brushing against his shoulder. Instead of pain, he felt warmth, a tingling sensation that spread through him like comfort. "Oh, this is actually nice," he admitted softly, his dream self smiling with a rare ease. Each jellyfish pulse left trails of golden dust that floated around him, wrapping him in a soft glow. Morty reached out, touching one of the lights. It clung to his palm like a firefly, then dissolved into his skin, leaving him even lighter, calmer. Back in the cockpit, Rick tilted his head, noticing tiny golden motes drifting past the ship. They weren't dangerous, not corrosive or radioactive, just particles, gentle, almost as if the nebula was breathing dream fragments into their path. Rick let out a slow breath through his nose. Figures. Even space dust knows how to tuck people in. His voice trailed off as his own mind tugged at the edges of sleep. For a brief moment, Rick almost let go, almost followed Morty into dream space. But he caught himself, blinking his eyes open again. He wasn't ready to sleep, not fully. Someone had to keep watch, even if the universe itself seemed intent on rocking them to bed. The jellyfish in Morty's dream rose higher, drifting together in spirals. Morty followed, his feet making soft ripples with every step. His anxiety, his usual stammering nervousness, seemed far away here. Instead, he was just floating. The dream sky shimmered and deepened. A giant planet loomed above, but instead of being menacing, it radiated a warm, golden glow like a nightlight. Morty stopped, staring up at it, and whispered, "Whoa." The glow spilled across his dream ocean, wrapping him in a light that made him feel safe in a way he rarely ever did back home. And outside, in the waking world, Rick adjusted slightly in his chair, finally allowing his eyelids to close halfway. His head lolled to the side, and a low, almost uncharacteristic hum escaped him. Not a groan, not a burp, just a soft hum, like he was unknowingly harmonizing with the ship's engine. The nebula thickened around them, carrying both dreamer and skeptic further into its quiet hold. Morty walked farther across the glowing surface, each step spreading ripples of light that stretched forever. The star jellyfish swirled around him in a slow dance, like they were guiding him somewhere. Their movements weren't random. There was a rhythm to it, like music without sound. Morty's shoulders, usually hunched with worry, were relaxed. His face carried an expression so rare it almost felt unreal. Calm wonder. One of the larger jellyfish drifted ahead, its tendrils glowing brighter than the others. Morty followed it instinctively, as though it were a friendly lantern leading him deeper into the dream. When he reached out, the creature pulsed, sending a wave of soft light across the glassy surface. Suddenly, pathways began forming beneath Morty's feet, glowing lines stretching outward like constellations drawn on the ground. Oh man. It's like a map or something, Morty whispered. His voice echoed strangely, almost blending with the gentle hum of the dream. He didn't question it too much. For once, it felt better just to follow. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, Rick shifted, his chin slipping against his shoulder. He muttered incoherently. The words blurred, but there was no edge to his voice. The nebula outside seemed to thrum with the same pulse Morty was experiencing in his dream. A faint shimmer leaked through the ship's viewport, sprinkling tiny motes of gold and violet across Rick's lap. His eyes fluttered open for just a second, catching the faint glow in the cabin. Great. Now the universe is redecorating. He smirked weakly, but his words had no bite. Then his eyes closed again, too heavy to hold open. And then, the dream began tugging at him. In Morty's world, new shapes began forming overhead. Stars weren't just twinkling, they were connecting, weaving threads of light between them. Soon, giant constellations towered in the dream sky, forming into outlines of strange, whimsical creatures. A snail with glowing antennae, a whale made of galaxies, even what looked suspiciously like Gary the snail. Morty laughed, surprised at himself. Gary? Even in space you follow me around, Morty said, reaching up as if to pet the starlight creature. His hand passed through it, sending shimmers cascading down like falling glitter. Rick's head tilted back in his chair and his breathing slowed. The nebula light seeped into his subconscious, pushing against the barrier of his restless mind. For the first time in maybe years, Rick wasn't dreaming of regrets or dark memories. Instead, the dream found him gently. He was standing on the same glassy expanse, though a short distance away from Morty. His posture was different, shoulders straight, eyes sharp, but his expression carried something softer than usual. Rick glanced around, noting the jellyfish and constellations. Huh, he muttered, though his voice didn't echo the usual cynicism. Dream nebula, huh? Figures. Morty didn't notice him at first, too busy following the luminous map that stretched under his feet. He only stopped when the path ahead split into two glowing trails, one leading toward a glowing tower in the distance, and the other toward what looked like a vast field of drifting, crystalline orbs. The jellyfish hovered, waiting for him to choose. Back in the waking world, their bodies remained slouched in their chairs aboard the ship, faint golden particles still swirling around them. But inside the dream, the two of them stood on the edge of something vast and surreal, both carried by the same current without even realizing it yet. Rick stuffed his hands into his lab coat pockets and exhaled the dream breath, forming faint trails of silver mist. All right, Morty, let's see where this bedtime story takes us. Morty squinted at the two glowing paths stretching out before him, his hands fumbling nervously at his sides. Okay. So it's like, pick your own adventure? Oh man, I always mess these up. If I pick the wrong one, I'll probably end up stuck in some weird space worm's stomach or something. The jellyfish pulsed softly, hovering patiently, their light almost encouraging him. Morty chewed his lip and finally pointed toward the path leading to the glowing tower. That one, yeah, towers are safe, right? You can climb them, and maybe there's like a bed up there or something. But before he could step forward, a familiar voice echoed behind him. Wrong choice, Morty. Towers? Always symbolic of arrogance, downfall, yada yada. If you're dreaming, you take the weird orb field every time. Everyone knows that. Morty spun around so fast he almost tripped on his own foot. His eyes widened as he saw Rick, hands stuffed in his pockets, standing casually like he'd been there the whole time. Rick? What the— wait, you're here? In my dream? Rick raised an eyebrow, smirking faintly. Relax, Morty. It's not your dream, it's the Nebula's dream. Shared subconscious playground. Congratulations, we're co-sleeping in the cosmic DMV of bedtime. Morty blinked, stunned. I didn't even think you could, relax enough to dream with me. This is like crazy, Rick. You're really here. Rick scratched his chin, his smirk fading just a little as his eyes took in the starry horizon. Yeah, well, don't get all sentimental on me. Place is basically a glorified lava lamp. Just don't step on anything that looks like a tax form. Morty laughed nervously, though the sound was lighter than usual. The dream was making even Rick's sarcasm feel less heavy. He glanced between the two paths again, then back at Rick. So, which way? You really think the orb feels better? Rick snorted. Obviously. Towers are metaphors for hubris, Morty. Or nightmares about running out of gas. Or both. He took a step toward the orb path, his boots sending glowing ripples across the surface. Trust me, you'll thank me later. Morty hesitated, staring at the tower path. It was beautiful, glowing brighter by the second, as though beckoning him. But then he looked at Rick, his grandfather of all people, actually walking with him in a dream instead of dragging him through some nightmarish science experiment. That rare feeling of trust bubbled up. Okay. Yeah, fine. Orbs it is, Morty muttered, shuffling after Rick. As the two stepped onto the glowing path toward the crystalline orbs, the jellyfish began to hum, their lights swelling like an approving nod. The ground beneath them rippled, and suddenly the horizon shifted. The stars overhead bent, reshaping into more glowing lines, like a book opening its next chapter. Soon they were surrounded by massive floating spheres, each one shimmering like it was carved from starlight and glass. The orbs drifted slowly, each filled with faint images swirling inside, shapes of memories, maybe dreams of others who had wandered through the nebula before them. Morty pressed his face closer to one. Inside, he saw what looked like a cozy living room on Earth. A small child was curled up on the couch with their pet dog fast asleep, a blanket wrapped snugly around them. The glow of a lamp painted everything warm. Morty smiled softly. Oh, wow. It's like little bottled dreams. Rick leaned against another orb, peering inside. This one showed a scientist in some far-off galaxy, laughing while their alien colleagues clinked glasses together in celebration. Rick's mouth twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile, but wasn't his usual frown either. Huh? Morty looked at him, surprised. You seen it too? Rick cleared his throat, stepping away. Yeah, Morty. They're collective dream spheres. Universal subconscious is a crowded place. Big whoop. But his voice was quieter than before, almost thoughtful. The two continued walking deeper into the field, surrounded by orbs that glowed with fragments of joy, hope, and calm from countless beings across the universe. Each step made the dream feel less like an adventure and more like a rest stop for the soul. As Rick and Morty stepped deeper into the crystalline orb field, one of the spheres drifted closer than the others, glowing brighter than the rest. It floated lazily, pulsing softly, as if aware of their presence. Morty stopped in his tracks, staring at it wide-eyed. Rick? He whispered. This one, it's like calling to me or something. Rick squinted, folding his arms. Yeah, I see it, Morty. Just a particularly shiny fragment of someone else's nap. Nothing to worry about. Probably. But the moment Morty reached out, the orb expanded gently, enveloping them in a halo of warm, golden light. The edges of the dreamscape shimmered, twisting and bending. For a second, they were no longer standing on the glassy surface. They were floating inside the orb itself. Morty blinked. Whoa! Rick! We're inside it? Rick raised an eyebrow, the smirk forming despite himself. Told you, Morty, shared subconscious. Welcome to someone else's nap. Don't touch anything important. Inside, the world was surreal and soft. The floor beneath them was invisible, replaced by a faint glow that seemed to cradle their feet. Tiny twinkling particles floated around, sparkling with every motion. The walls, if they could be called walls, curved upward endlessly, like the inside of a giant glass dome. Shapes drifted within the orb, faint, comforting silhouettes of forests, oceans, and mountains that shimmered as if alive. Morty took a cautious step forward. It's kind of like walking through someone's imagination, but cozy. Not scary, weirdly cozy. Rick nodded slowly, hands in his pockets. Yeah, that's the point. Universe sometimes lets you hit pause. Shows you the soft stuff. Not every place is exploding or hostile. They drifted toward one section of the orb where a gentle stream glimmered under starlight. Strange, transparent fish swam through it, leaving trails of silver sparkles that floated in the air like floating lanterns. Morty bent down, trying to catch one, but it drifted through his fingers, dissolving into the light. It's kind of like catching fireflies underwater, Morty said softly, smiling. His usual tension, the constant nerves, were gone. Even his voice carried the dreamy calm of the orb. Rick, surprisingly quiet, scanned the surroundings. He reached out to touch one of the glowing streams, and a soft hum resonated through the orb. The sound vibrated gently against their skin, like a warm whisper brushing against their nerves. Rick leaned back slightly, closing his eyes for a moment. Morty noticed, his voice barely a whisper. Rick, are you relaxed? Rick's eyes opened just enough to give a crooked half-smile. Maybe a little. Don't get used to it, Morty. They drifted further, moving past glowing plants that bent in waves as if a soft wind passed through the orb. Luminescent creatures hovered nearby, watching with quiet curiosity. Morty's hand brushed one, and a faint warmth tingled across his palm. It's nice, he murmured. Everything's, nice. Rick's gaze lingered on the particles swirling around them. Yeah, they're peaceful, he admitted softly, more to himself than Morty. His voice was quieter than normal, almost reverent, carrying the rare weight of calm that the universe only occasionally offered. Morty's eyelids drooped as they moved deeper into the orb. The stream of silvery particles seemed to guide them, wrapping them in gentle light and soft hums. Even the alien jellyfish from earlier, faint and ethereal, drifted nearby in dreamlike echoes. Rick, think we could stay here forever? Morty mumbled, half asleep. Rick glanced at him, smirking faintly. Forever? Pfft. Morty, no, but we can hang around long enough to recharge. That's the deal. Morty yawned, leaning slightly against Rick's shoulder in the dream. I like this, I like it. Rick's arms stayed at his sides, but his eyes softened. Yeah, me too, Morty. Me too. The orb glowed brighter, wrapping both of them in gentle light as they drifted forward together, weightless, calm, floating deeper into a universe where time didn't matter and nothing was chasing them. Morty's eyes were nearly closed now, his head resting lightly against Rick's shoulder. The golden glow of the orb wrapped around them like a soft blanket, and even the faint hum of the nebula outside seemed to match the rhythm of their breathing. In the dream, The path of light beneath their feet began to curve gently upward, forming a bridge of shimmering starlight that led them toward the very heart of the orb. Here the dream space became even quieter, almost sacred. Tiny motes of silver and gold floated lazily, swirling around their feet like snow caught in sunlight. Morty tilted his head, whispering softly, "Rick, it's beautiful. Never thought space could, feel cozy." Rick let out a low chuckle, softer than usual, almost lost in the ambient glow. "Yeah, Morty. Guess the universe has a sense of humor, and occasionally, a soft side." They walked in silence for a while, simply floating along the glowing bridge. The luminous jellyfish, the gentle streams, and the sparkling orbs all seemed to watch them, their presence more protective than alien. Morty's usual nerves were nowhere to be found, replaced by a rare, untroubled calm. Ahead, the path widened into a circular platform of light, floating in the very center of the orb. Here the glow was warmer, like the soft light of a campfire, but made entirely of starlight. Morty sank to the surface, crossing his legs as though sitting on a cozy rug, letting the warmth of the dream settle into him. Rick joined him, leaning back on his hands. "Not bad, huh? Quiet. No screaming alien mutants, no interdimensional chaos, just drifting." Morty tilted his head, smiling sleepily. "Yeah, just drifting." He yawned, stretching, then curled slightly into the soft glow. His eyelids closed completely, letting the dream pull him fully in. Rick watched him, faintly amused but quietly reflective. "You know, Morty, even I can't mess this up. No gadgets, no experiments. Just peace. Crazy." The nebula outside mirrored the tranquility inside the orb. Colors flowed gently, lavender into teal, soft gold into pale pink, painting the cruiser with calm light. Even the hum of the ship felt synchronized with the dream, resonating in harmony with the stars themselves. Morty's breathing slowed, a steady rhythm, the rise and fall of his chest blending seamlessly with the subtle pulsing of the nebula. He was asleep now, fully, dreams untouched by panic or fear. Rick let out a long exhale, shoulders relaxing more than they had in ages. He wasn't asleep yet, but the rare sense of calm had crept in. For a moment he almost envied Morty. Effortless rest, untroubled by the universe's usual chaos. A gentle breeze of light swirled around them inside the orb, nudging them forward along the starlit bridge. The crystalline walls reflected the soft glow, scattering it into infinite fragments, and each fragment shimmered like a tiny promise of peace. Rick muttered quietly, "Yeah, this isn't so bad." His voice was almost a whisper, fading into the hum of the cruiser's engine. The orb's light began to dim slowly, fading into the soft glow of the nebula outside. Morty stirred slightly in his sleep but didn't wake. Rick adjusted his seat, leaning back and letting his eyes close for just a few seconds, savoring the rare stillness. Outside the orb, the cruiser drifted slowly, carrying them both deeper into the calm stretch of space. Stars shimmered lazily, painting the endless darkness with gentle light. The ship's engine hummed quietly, in perfect rhythm with the dream space and the nebula's pulse. And for one rare night and one rare dream, Rick and Morty floated together, weightless, calm, and untouched by chaos. The universe stretched endlessly around them, vast, silent, and serene. The nebula whispered softly, a lullaby in color and light, and Morty, sleeping deeply, let himself be carried along the slowest, gentlest journey he had ever known. Rick's eyes finally closed, a faint, uncharacteristic smile tugging at his lips. Even he could admit quietly, to the universe and himself, peace was nice. The cruiser drifted lazily through the nebula, its hull glowing softly from the ambient light outside. Inside the dream, Morty blinked against the shimmer, finally lifting his head from the soft starlight bridge. Whoa. Rick, where are we now? Rick squinted, stretching his arms behind his head. Don't worry, Morty. According to the nebula, we're at the Cosmic Campfire. Highly rated in the intergalactic dream guides. Very cozy. Lots of marshmallow-like entities. Morty's eyes widened. Marshmallow? What? Rick rolled his eyes. Yeah, don't ask. You'll find out soon enough. Ahead, the dreamscape opened into a circular clearing, bathed in the golden glow of a giant, hovering campfire. The flames weren't ordinary. They were composed of soft light, flickering in slow, rhythmic patterns. Sparks drifted lazily into the air, forming small constellations that twinkled and faded before they even reached the edge of the clearing. Around the campfire, gentle alien creatures lounged on glowing logs. They were small, soft, and oddly comforting. Some resembled floating jelly cushions, others like tiny crystal kittens with stars for eyes. They didn't speak in words, but hummed melodiously, a soothing tune that made the clearing feel like it existed outside of time. Morty tiptoed closer, the starlight from the bridge still trailing faintly behind him. He crouched near the edge, eyes wide. Rick, they're so cute and quiet. It's, nice. Rick ambled beside him, leaning on a glowing stick that functioned like a campfire poker, though it seemed entirely ornamental. Yeah, Morty, most dream creatures are either terrifying or annoying. These ones? Basically free therapy sessions, minus the talking. One of the floating jelly cushions drifted over to Morty, nudging his hand softly. Morty giggled, holding it carefully. The creature's body shimmered, leaving tiny specks of light on his palm that faded into warmth. Oh, wow. It's like it's hugging me? Rick smirked. See? Even in dreams, Morty. You can find comfort if you're not screaming the whole time. Morty glanced around, noticing that the campfire sparks were forming playful shapes. Small animals, abstract spirals, and even what looked like little copies of himself and Rick, lounging in the dream. Huh, look, Rick. That one's us. Rick leaned back, observing the sparks. Yeah, not bad, kind of like a nightlight show for the universe. He paused, letting the quiet hum of the campfire settle over them. You feel that, Morty? That's actual calm. Don't mess it up. Morty nodded, still crouched near the glowing creatures. I won't. It's really nice here. No chasing, no exploding planets. Just, quiet. From the edge of the clearing, a faint stream of soft starlight arched into the campfire, mingling with the sparks. Tiny motes floated through the air like fireflies, landing gently on Morty's shoulders. He closed his eyes, letting the warmth wash over him. Rick leaned against a glowing log, watching him. Yeah. Sometimes the universe throws you a bone, Morty. Rare, but here it is. A soft breeze, made entirely of drifting starlight, passed through the clearing, rustling the glowing logs and making the alien creatures sway gently. Morty stretched and yawned, the peaceful hum of the campfire sinking into his chest. Rick, this is really perfect. Morty mumbled, already half asleep. Rick shook his head, smiling faintly. Yeah, Morty. Perfect enough to make a guy forget all the chaos for a little while. The two sat quietly, letting the golden light of the cosmic campfire envelope them. The alien creatures hummed, sparks drifted lazily, and the nebula outside bathed the cruiser in soft color, mirroring the warmth of the dream inside. Morty leaned back, his eyes closing fully this time. I could stay here forever. Rick smirked, faintly tugging at his flask. but didn't drink. Don't get any ideas, kid. But yeah, enjoy it while it lasts. And for one brief stretch of time, there was no screaming, no chasing, no portals. Just the hum of starlight, gentle creatures, and a universe that, for once, wanted them to rest. Morty reached out to touch one of the glowing jelly cushions. It quivered slightly under his fingers, then shimmered and floated up into the air, circling him like a tiny, friendly orbit. Morty laughed softly, the sound light and unburdened. Whoa! It's like it knows me. Like it's playing with me. Rick leaned back on a log, smirking faintly but watching closely. Yeah, Morty. These dream critters are smart enough to pick up on calm vibes. You're peaceful. Enjoy it while it lasts. Morty crouched down, and a small crystal kitten drifted toward him, its starry eyes blinking slowly. It nudged his shoulder, leaving behind a soft trail of glittering light. Morty's fingers twitched, reaching out to catch it. The creature wrapped itself around his wrist like a tiny bracelet, purring in a glow-only language that he somehow understood as contentment. Ah, Rick, look, it likes me, Morty whispered. His voice was hushed, almost reverent, as if saying it louder might scare away the magic. Rick chuckled, shaking his head. Don't get used to it, Morty. Dream creatures are great, until they start asking for rent. He stretched lazily, the faint smile tugging at his lips, softening the usual edge of his face. But I gotta admit, it's kinda nice. Not that I'd sit here all day. Morty wandered further into the clearing, the golden light from the campfire casting soft shadows on the glowing logs. Sparks from the fire formed tiny shapes that floated toward him, twisting into small animals, then miniature versions of Rick and Morty lounging together. Morty grinned sleepily, pointing at one. Ha! Look, that's us! Rick squinted at it, smirking. Yeah, nightmare version of us, right? No screaming, no explosions. Basically harmless. He tapped his finger against one of the glowing logs, sending a ripple of golden light across its surface. Kinda mesmerizing, huh? Morty nodded, reaching out to touch a floating spark. The moment his fingers made contact, it expanded, coating the surrounding area in a warm glow that made the campfire seem even more magical. He gasped softly. It's like the whole clearing's alive. Rick's eyes softened as he watched. Yeah, alive and peaceful, unheard of in our line of work. Morty crouched beside the campfire, the floating creatures drifting close. He leaned in, watching the flames pulse and change color, from gold to lavender, then to a faint teal. The colors reflected in his eyes, mesmerizing him. I don't ever want to leave. It feels safe, warm. Rick shifted closer, lowering his voice. Morty, maybe that's the point. This dream, this campfire, it's showing you what calm feels like. Even I can't ruin it. Well, not easily. He chuckled softly, a rare, genuine sound that blended with the hum of the nebula outside. The creatures gathered around Morty, shimmering in waves of color, as if sharing their warmth. The air was thick with soft light and gentle hums, and the universe outside the cruiser mirrored the serenity inside the dream. Golden and lavender starlight seeped through the windows, wrapping both dreamers in a glow that made the cabin feel like part of the campfire itself. Morty yawned, curling slightly into the warmth of the glowing jelly cushions. This is perfect. Rick leaned back, observing him. Yeah, Morty. Perfect enough to make a guy shut up and just watch. Not bad at all. A breeze of starlight drifted through the clearing, brushing their faces and wrapping them in comfort. Sparks rose from the campfire, forming constellations above, and Morty let himself drift fully into the calm. Rick didn't move, But the rare sense of stillness settled over him, too, an unusual reprieve from the chaos of their lives. For a few moments, nothing else existed. Just the glowing campfire, gentle alien creatures, and the soft, protective hum of the universe around them. Morty stretched lazily, still surrounded by the floating creatures. The campfire's sparks twisted into new shapes. Tiny, glowing fish, drifting clouds, even abstract patterns that reminded him of his favorite video games back home. Each spark seemed to pulse with gentle intention, as if it were alive and aware of him. Rick leaned against a log, watching the scene unfold. Not bad, Morty. I'd almost say this is better than a real campfire. No smoke, no bugs, no screaming alien bugs trying to eat your socks. He smirked faintly, letting the moment linger. Morty reached toward a drifting spark, and it expanded, forming a miniature floating island beneath his fingers. Tiny trees with luminescent leaves grew instantly, their branches swaying in a breeze only present in this dream. Morty's eyes widened. Whoa! I'm making stuff happen. Rick shook his head, chuckling softly. Yeah, kid. That's what dreams do. You think you're just watching, but sometimes you're the brush, the painter, the canvas, and the spectator all at once. Morty's smile widened. He stretched his hands, forming small glowing rivers that snaked around the islands, turning them into vibrant little dreamlands. The jelly cushions floated nearby, observing his creations and humming faintly, a sound that resonated deep in his chest. This is amazing, Rick. It's like I can, I don't know, touch the universe without breaking it, Morty whispered, utterly captivated. Rick's eyes softened, unusual for him. Yeah, without exploding it for once. Careful, though, or you'll start thinking you're some cosmic god, he smirked, though his voice carried a rare warmth. Morty laughed quietly. I don't want to be a god. Just this. Just calm. Just here. As they moved further into the clearing, the campfire sparks began forming shapes above them. Gentle spirals, glowing bridges, even a faint outline of the cruiser drifting outside, mirrored in the dream. Morty noticed, pointing up. Rick, look, that's the ship. Rick glanced upward, nodding. Yeah, even in dreams, the ship's the anchor. Keeps the universe from completely forgetting us. He tapped a floating log, sending a ripple through the dreamlight. Neat, huh? Morty crouched beside one of the floating islands, touching the glowing soil. He responded, faint pulses radiating outward. The alien creatures drifted closer, wrapping around him like a gentle aura. He closed his eyes, letting the warmth of the dream seep into every corner of his mind. Rick watched him, leaning back. Never thought I'd see the day. Morty, actually at peace. He shook his head softly, letting a rare chuckle escape. Okay. Maybe the universe knows what it's doing sometimes. The nebula outside the cruiser shimmered in response, the light bathing the cabin in soft pastel glows. Even the hum of the engine seemed to slow, matching the rhythm of the dream. Morty yawned deeply, the golden glow of the campfire reflecting in his half-closed eyes. I don't want to wake up. Rick leaned forward, adjusting slightly. Yeah, me neither, but we got to eventually. Still, soak it in while it lasts, kid. The alien creatures hummed softly, spinning in gentle spirals around the campfire. Sparks floated upward, forming constellations that told stories of gentle worlds, quiet dreams, and peaceful moments across the universe. Morty traced one with his fingers, feeling a warmth that stayed with him even as he drifted closer to sleep. For a while, Rick and Morty just sat there, letting the dream cradle them. The campfire's glow wrapped around every corner of the clearing. The floating creatures added a gentle rhythm, and the nebula outside mirrored the serenity within. Morty's breathing slowed, each exhale a soft ripple in the dreamlight. Rick, unusually still, allowed the quiet to wash over him. The universe, for once, seemed to simply exist for them to enjoy. As Morty leaned back, the glowing creatures floated closer, surrounding him in a gentle cocoon of warmth and light. The campfire sparks danced higher, forming delicate arcs that spiraled upward like soft fireworks, painting the dreamscape with pastel streaks of gold, lavender, and teal. Morty's eyes were half closed now, his smile lingering. "Rick, this is the best dream ever." Rick adjusted his posture, leaning on a floating log. "Yeah, Morty, for once. No screaming, no alien chases, just calm. Hard to argue with that." He let the words hang in the air, almost as if admitting it to himself more than to Morty. The dream seemed to respond, the campfire glowing brighter, its sparks forming gentle patterns that mimicked laughter and soft exclamations. Tiny starlight fish darted through the glow, leaving trails that shimmered and faded like a slow cosmic dance. Morty reached out, letting the light of the sparks wash over his hands. Each touch made the dream ripple, shifting softly around him. The alien creatures hummed, a low melodic sound that resonated in his chest, syncing with his heartbeat. It's like everything's alive, Rick. But safe. Friendly. Rick's smirk softened. Yeah. Alive, friendly, and perfectly harmless. You don't get that very often. Enjoy it while it lasts. He paused, scanning the dreamscape. Even I can't mess with perfection. Kinda humbling. Morty tilted his head, watching the floating sparks twist and weave. I feel calm. I feel happy. His words were almost a whisper, carried gently through the glow. He yawned, curling slightly into the soft warmth of the creatures surrounding him. Rick's eyes narrowed, studying the scene. Morty, I think maybe even I could get used to this, just floating, calm, no explosions. Never thought I'd say that. Morty drifted closer to Rick, leaning slightly against his side in the dream. Don't worry, Rick. You're safe too. It's nice here. Rick glanced down, the faintest tug at his lips, hinting at a smile. Yeah, safe. For now. He let the words fade into the hum of the campfire and the soft glow of the nebula. Around them, the dream continued to pulse gently. Sparks rose in endless patterns, alien creatures shifted in soft arcs, and the campfire's golden light bathed everything in warmth. The nebula outside mirrored the serenity, brushing faint pastel colors across the cruiser's cabin. Morty's breathing deepened, steady and slow, syncing perfectly with the gentle rhythm of the dream. Rick leaned back against a log, letting the rare sense of peace settle over him. The universe, for once, seemed content to let them rest. "You know, Morty," Rick murmured softly, "sometimes the universe isn't trying to kill you. Strange, but nice." Morty smiled in his sleep. "I like it." Rick let out a long, quiet breath, the tension in his shoulders loosening. "Yeah, me too, kid. Me too." The floating orbs and sparks slowly began to dim, fading gently into the background as the dream started to settle. The alien creatures drifted lazily into the glow, humming their soft melodies one last theme. Morty's face reflected the golden light, serene and calm, the rarest expression of absolute comfort. Rick watched him for a moment longer, then allowed his eyes to close fully. The soft hum of the cruiser and the nebula outside wrapped around them, echoing the gentle pulse of the dream. For one perfect stretch of time, there was no chaos, no danger, no interdimensional threats, just calm, comfort, and a universe willing to cradle them in quiet. The cosmic campfire flickered, its last soft sparks as the dream gently faded, leaving both Rick and Morty floating, weightless and serene, ready to drift deeper into the mysteries of the nebula and the dreams yet to come. The cruiser drifted silently through the nebula, its hull bathed in the soft purples, blues and golds of distant star clusters. Inside the dream, Morty blinked against the gentle glow, finally opening his eyes to see a vast forest stretching endlessly before him. But this wasn't any ordinary forest. The trees glimmered faintly with starlight, their trunks transparent, revealing faintly swirling galaxies inside. Leaves hung suspended in midair, drifting lazily downward, leaving trails of soft golden light as they fell. It was as if the forest itself were breathing, pulsing gently with the rhythm of the universe. "Whoa," Morty whispered, stepping carefully onto a moss-like path that glowed softly under his feet. Rick, is this real?" Rick ambled beside him, hands in his pockets, squinting at the surreal landscape. "Define real, Morty. If you're asking if the nebula made your brain hallucinate a sparkling forest, yes. If you're asking if it's safe, also yes. Probably." He smirked faintly, scanning the glowing plants. "And I gotta admit, it's kinda neat." Tiny creatures floated among the leaves, soft, feathered beings with eyes that glimmered like distant stars. They didn't make a sound, but their presence was calming, like the gentle hum of a lullaby. Morty crouched down, letting one of them land on his shoulder. It shimmered faintly, leaving a warm glow that spread across his skin. "Rick, it's like the forest is alive, and it wants to, I don't know, be nice," Morty whispered, eyes wide with wonder. Rick tilted his head, observing a nearby cluster of luminous vines curling like ribbons in zero gravity. "Yeah, Morty. Looks like even the nebula can be gentle. Go figure." Above them, streaks of starlight fell gently from the sky like tiny shooting stars raining down into the glade. Each star left a sparkling trail as it passed, drifting to the ground and dissolving into soft light. Morty reached out to touch one, and it melted into a warm glow that lingered on his palm. "It's magical," Morty murmured, twirling the faint light between his fingers. I never want to leave." Rick crouched to peer at a glowing, mushroom-like plant. "Yeah, kid, it's all right, but, even magical glades need rules. Don't touch anything suspicious, like those glowing pools. They're not always water. Could be plasma, or dreams of plasma. Either way, careful." Morty giggled, the sound soft and airy. "Got it. No plasma pools." He stepped further along the glowing path, following the gentle curves of the moss-like trail. With each step, the forest seemed to respond, the trees bending slightly, leaves shimmering brighter as if guiding him forward. Rick shook his head, smiling faintly. "Kid, you got a way of turning even a dream forest into a personal light show. Impressive." Morty looked up at him, grinning sleepily. "I just like this place, Rick. It's calm. It's soft. It's cozy." Rick's gaze softened as he followed Morty, the glow of the glade reflecting in his eyes. "Yeah, Morty. Cozy enough to make a guy forget about interdimensional paperwork. Almost." He smirked, letting the words fade into the gentle hum of the dream. They wandered deeper into the Starfall Glade, surrounded by twinkling vines, floating petals, and drifting starlight. Soft moss cushioned every step, and tiny alien creatures peeked from behind glowing trees, observing them with a quiet curiosity. Morty reached out to touch a floating petal, and it dissolved into sparkling dust, raining down over him like a gentle shower. "It's so soft, like everything's welcoming," he whispered. Rick smirked faintly, observing the scene. Yeah. Even the universe can throw you a bone now and then, Morty. Don't get used to it, though. Above, starlight streaked lazily through the transparent canopy, forming faint constellations that seemed to tell gentle stories of cosmic kindness. Morty tilted his head, letting the light wash over him, feeling weightless, safe, and utterly calm. Morty wandered further along the softly glowing path, his eyes scanning every shimmering detail. Floating leaves twirled in slow spirals, brushing against his cheeks and leaving faint trails of light in their wake. Small creatures with translucent wings flitted between branches, their tiny hums blending into the gentle pulse of the forest. Rick, it's like the whole place is alive and friendly, Morty whispered, crouching down to watch a group of tiny star kittens chase one another around a glowing fern. Each pounce left a streak of soft light behind them, fading slowly like morning mist. Rick ambled beside him, arms crossed. Yeah, Morty, friendly. But don't forget, it's a dream forest. Things can get weird if you overstep. He smirked faintly, pointing toward a pool of liquid starlight that shimmered unnaturally. See that? Looks calm. Probably safe. Probably. Maybe. Morty laughed softly, tiptoeing past the shimmering pool. I'll stay on the path, I promise. The glowing path led them into a wider clearing where the starlight rain thickened. Morty tilted his head back, watching the falling stars swirl around him. Whoa, Rick! It's like walking through a cloud of stars. Rick's eyes twitched in mild amusement. Yeah. And unlike a cloud of gas in real life, these ones won't burn your eyebrows off, so consider yourself lucky. He nudged a floating log with his foot, sending sparks of light cascading gently across the clearing. Even I can't ruin this. Not yet, anyway. Morty crouched beside a tiny glowing creature that resembled a crystal fox with eyes like galaxies. It twitched its ears, leaving faint trails of starlight wherever it stepped. Hi there. You're cute, Morty whispered, extending a hand. The fox nuzzled it softly, leaving a warm glow in Morty's palm. Rick watched quietly, leaning against a luminous tree trunk. Kid, you got a knack for making friends with dream fauna. Impressive. Even I'm slightly jealous. Morty giggled, following the fox as it darted between roots that glowed faintly beneath the moss. It's just so fun, Rick. I could explore forever. Rick shook his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Yeah, don't get any ideas, but okay, yeah, I get it. This is nice. Above them, the starlight streaks grew denser, forming delicate bridges of glowing light that arched across the glade. Morty reached out, letting a trail of falling stars wash over his hands, watching the soft glow ripple through the air. It's magical, he whispered. Rick crouched beside him, studying the bridge. Yeah, kid, magical and oddly calming. I don't say that often, so savor it. Morty glanced up at the sky where constellations made of tiny glowing orbs traced gentle, whimsical shapes. Rick, it feels like the universe is telling a story. Just for us. Rick smirked faintly, though his voice softened. Yeah. A story with no explosions, no portals, no chaos. Imagine that. He tapped the glowing moss beneath his hand. Even the ground is on our side. Morty sank to the soft moss, letting the warm glow of the starlight and the gentle hum of the forest wrap around him. The fox curled at his feet, the falling stars shimmering softly over his shoulders. I feel so calm, he murmured. Rick leaned back, hands behind his head, gazing at the dancing starlight. Yeah, calm rare, but refreshing. The dream deepened, the forest's light pulses synchronizing with the soft hum of the cruiser outside. Morty's eyelids grew heavy, his breath slow and steady, while Rick remained quiet, absorbing the serene beauty of the Starfall Glade. For a brief, perfect moment, the universe felt like it existed solely to cradle them in peace, weightless, warm, and magical. Morty rose slowly from the soft moss, still surrounded by drifting starlight and tiny forest creatures. The glowing path twisted forward, leading them toward a section of the glade where luminous flowers hovered midair, petals spinning gently as if caught in an invisible breeze. The light they emitted pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat. Rick, look at these flowers. They're floating, Morty exclaimed, stepping closer to watch the petals drift in slow arcs. Each touch he made left a faint trail of sparkling light that lingered for a few seconds before fading into the glade. Rick crouched beside him, letting a strand of glowing moss dangle between his fingers. Yeah, floating flowers. Classic dream logic. Makes perfect sense if you ignore all the laws of physics. Nice, though. He glanced at the glowing moss under his hand, the soft pulse of light matching Morty's heartbeat. Even I have to admit, kid, this is kind of soothing. Morty reached out to one of the hovering petals. It twirled around his fingers before darting up into the air, leaving a tiny trail of stardust that sparkled against the mossy floor. Whoa, it's like the whole forest is alive, and it likes me. A gentle, melodic hum drifted from the trees, and small star foxes peeked from behind the trunks. They twitched their luminous tails, weaving playful patterns in the air. Morty grinned and crouched to follow one as it darted forward, leaving a trail of soft golden light that dissolved slowly. It's like they're showing me the way, guiding me. Rick shook his head faintly, smirking. Kid, you got a way with dream creatures. I'd say it's natural, but I'd be lying. Still, impressive. He followed the floating foxes cautiously, observing their gentle movements. Even in a dream, Morty, it's a rare thing to feel this calm. The starlight above intensified slightly, forming delicate arches between the trees that twinkled and shimmered as if alive. Morty reached up, letting the falling light wash over his hands, laughing softly as sparkles tickled his fingers. It's magical, Rick. I could stay here forever. Rick glanced at him, folding his arms with a faint grin. Forever? Not gonna happen. But, yeah. Nice while it lasts. He bent down to touch a glowing root, and a soft ripple of light spread across the clearing, causing the hovering flowers to spin in synchrony. Even the forest cooperating. Can't ruin this, Morty. Even I can't. Morty wandered further, following a narrow trail that curved toward a sparkling pool of light. The water glowed faintly, reflecting constellations above, and soft waves pulsed gently with a rhythm that matched the ambient hum of the forest. A tiny star fox leapt across the pool, its paws leaving glowing prints that faded slowly. It's so peaceful. Rick, I feel safe here, Morty murmured, kneeling by the edge of the pool. He let his hand hover over the water, watching the gentle ripples distort the reflection of the starlit canopy above. Rick crouched beside him, observing quietly. Yeah, safe. That's new for us. Rare, but I like it. He smirked faintly. Even I can take a breather. A tiny one. The forest seemed to respond, the floating petals spinning slower, the starlight pulsing softer, and the gentle hum echoing in perfect harmony. Morty's eyelids drooped, his breathing steadying as he absorbed the serene magic of the glade. Rick leaned back on a glowing log, letting the soft light reflect across his face. Kid, Sometimes the universe surprises you with calm. Strange, but I'll take it. Morty yawned, sinking slightly into the moss as the tiny creatures gathered around him. The light from the flowers and stars wrapped them in a soft cocoon of warmth. "I love it here," he whispered, eyes closing slowly. The glade shimmered softly around them, and the cruiser outside reflected the same serene hues, wrapping the dream in perfect harmony. The gentle glow of the Starfall Glade wrapped around Morty like a soft blanket, the floating petals and drifting starlight creating a cocoon of warmth and calm. Morty sank fully into the soft moss, letting the tiny star foxes curl around his arms and shoulders. "It's perfect." "Rick," he murmured, eyes half closed. Rick crouched beside him, leaning back against the luminous tree trunk. "Yeah, Morty. Perfect, quiet, and surprisingly unchaotic. Even I can't ruin this one," he said, letting a rare, faint smile tug at his lips. The hum of the forest, the gentle pulse of light, even the cruiser outside, they all seemed synchronized in serene harmony. Above, the starlight rain thickened slightly, forming delicate patterns and constellations. Some arcs of light traced gentle spirals, while others twisted into shapes that reminded Morty of distant worlds and familiar adventures, but all were calm and playful. He reached up, letting a soft trail of light pass over his hands, feeling the warmth linger like a gentle hug. "It's like the universe is tucking me in," Morty whispered, curling slightly, his breathing slow and steady. The floating petals swirled softly above, leaving faint trails of stardust that drifted downward, wrapping around him. Rick observed quietly, hands resting on the glowing moss. "Yeah, like a bedtime story for the cosmos, with a few strange critters thrown in for flair. I can't argue with that." His voice softened, rare for him as he watched Morty drift fully into the dream. The tiny creatures hummed in unison, sending gentle ripples of light through the clearing. Each pulse resonated in Morty's chest, syncing with his heartbeat. The hovering flowers glimmered faintly, petals spinning lazily, casting soft shadows across the mossy floor. Every detail of the glade seemed alive and yet calm, watchful but welcoming. Morty yawned again, nestling further into the moss. I could stay here forever." Rick shook his head slightly, chuckling softly. "Forever? Huh. Don't tempt me, kid. But yeah, nice while it lasts. Almost makes a guy forget the rest of the chaos for a few minutes." Above them, the falling starlight shimmered in slow arcs, twirling gently before dissolving into the glowing forest floor. Each spark seemed to carry a soft lullaby, a promise of calm and comfort. Morty's eyelids fluttered closed fully, a peaceful smile settling on his face. Rick leaned back, finally closing his eyes as well. The gentle hum of the cruiser and the forest merged, the nebula's light painting soft patterns across the cabin. For one perfect stretch of time, there was no danger, no chaos, no exploding planets, just calm, gentle wonder, and the quiet companionship of the universe itself. And in that moment, for Rick and Morty, the Starfall Glade became more than a dream. It was a sanctuary, a soft pause in the endless adventure, a rare place where even the most restless minds could simply rest. The glade pulsed gently one last time, the floating creatures curling into tiny balls of glowing warmth, the starlight sprinkling faint trails across the moss, and the forests whispered softly as if saying goodnight. Morty slept soundly, cradled by light and warmth, while Rick allowed himself a moment of peace he rarely admitted existed. The Starfall Glade, serene and magical, would fade with the dream, but its calm lingered, leaving them ready to drift into whatever the universe had next, hearts lighter, minds quieter, and spirits gently soothed. And as the Starfall Glade fades and the nebula's gentle glow wraps around Rick and Morty, they float peacefully, free from chaos and full of calm. Let this serene journey linger with you, carrying you softly into dreamland. Good night, and may your dreams be as magical and comforting as the universe itself.